All right. Did y'all get a message?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We are recording and we are getting the party started. I first want to share my screen and look at our agenda. Can everybody see my agenda? Okay, so let's first talk about from Norhouse. You had to read chapter 10, and that was about servant leadership. And I love servant leadership. And it was just real interesting to, I had never read a lot of the historical perspective or the background and that kind of thing. So it was a good, really good chapter. So how would you apply your knowledge of servant leadership to your leadership style when you become a school leader? So one of the quotes that I pulled from servant leadership is, and this is a quote, servant leadership emphasizes that leaders be attentive to the concerns of their followers, empathize with them, and nurture them. Servant leaders put followers first, empower them, and help them develop their full personal capabilities. I thought that was just a really good summary, in my opinion, of what servant leadership is. So who wants to start by sharing? If you don't volunteer, I will, of course.
I'll go ahead and start.
Okay, great. Thank you.
To sum it up of what I talked about, I more or less said, like, learn my teaching staff and staff meetings, do, even team outings. When I was a teacher and at my one school, my principal, he did like staff, we did staff meetings, but we also did team meetings. Like we'd go bowling once a month, or we went to actual activities. So it really got to see what the staff was inside the classroom and outside, to learn those personalities and little quirks, and then taking that and apply it to how to build them based on their interests, their strengths, their weaknesses, knowing where you need to target at that level too. And then from there, I felt like once you get your staff on board and they're with you and they know you got their back, everything else can fall into place. You can implement new, hey, this is the way we're going to do data this year, because they know you're going to have their back and have their best interest at applying what you need to get your numbers or whatever data where you need to get it going.
So it's a lot on building relationships, I hear you say. All right. Who else?
I kind of took it too about working more alongside right with the teachers. I mean, there's times where, as a leader, you're still going to have to step into a classroom and teach at times. I know my principal has, but being right there with them, helping serve them and serve the students, but doing it with them, not just being like a dictator and being over top of them and telling them what to do, but doing it alongside of them.
Okay. Walking beside of them. Rebecca?
I think for me, the biggest impact was the multiple roles. Like I likened it to, the pastor at the church I used to attend. He did everything. He had his hand in, the ministry. He had it in pilgrimage. He did everything, and he was, like Eric was saying, being right there with them, and he was humble.
Right. I had someone tell me one time, and this was probably during my graduate work for ed leadership, that you don't need to tell people you're in charge. Everybody knows you're in charge. And when you have to feel like you have to tell them you're in charge, you're really not in charge.
You're not.
Yeah. Nari, can you share? She just went off my screen.
Yeah, I can.
Okay, great.
Actually, you had told me last week that you were a fixer. Yeah. I'm a fixer too. It's funny. I didn't think about it that way, but I am. I want to know what the problem is, how we can come to a solution. Not that I don't want to hear what you have to say, but come to a solution. So how can we fix this? But I have to agree with Sasha in the sense that I guess my prime example is they sent out a vote for staff member of the month. And it was classified and certified. I don't know these people. Mm-hmm. So to me, what are we gonna do as a school to make sure that everybody knows everybody, because a lot of times what happens is sixth grade knows each other, seventh grade knows each other, eighth grade knows each other, and everybody knows the EC teachers, but not knowing how is it honest to vote for people and you don't know them? It's a popularity contest. It really is. So implement something. I like what she said about what her principal did, implemented something so that we can get to know each other, because we
Yeah.
don't.
And that gets particularly hard in bigger schools. The bigger you
Mhm.
get, just like in classrooms, the harder it is to get to know people as individuals.
Yeah. My last school was like 1,200.
Yeah.
So you had 1,200 kids, you had like 85 staff members, and it was
Yeah.
just really hard to know each other.
You're right. You're right. Shay, can you chime in?
Yes, ma'am. So for me, servant leadership is everything. You're going to stand in the trenches with your staff and them knowing that you always have their back and you're going to be standing beside them working just as hard as they are. And then also about getting to know your staff and understanding how they work, and so that you can grow them in their bubble of how they work. And also, if you have to be firm with them about certain things, that you know how to approach them. And I take all my leadership with basketball. So my basketball teams, I started to give them this personality test. It's called Wired This Way or Wired That Way. And because I would figure out like who was the sanguine, who was the leader, who was the person who was blue, who kind of just never got hyped up for anything. Because in coaching, I'm a response person. I'm passionate. If I'm getting up and getting hyped and talking to the kids and getting them ready to pregame talk, and I had a group of kids who are just looking at me like, yeah, I could care less about what you're saying. But then I got a group that's like, the sanguines like me are like getting hyped up. And then I find myself only coaching towards the kids who are responding back to me. But it's not that the other 12 or 10 aren't responding. That's just not how they work. They're not wired that way. And it's not that they don't care or they're not passionate about what they're doing. Their response is just going to be different. So where I used to focus on those one kids, I'm like, okay, I need to figure out how to reach the kids who aren't sanguine like me, who are not going to get hyped, but they still care. So learning your staff and learning how they respond and how they react to situations, if it's something that we should be hyped about, if it's you have to reprimand them about something, if you're growing them or something, you have to have that serious conversation. You need to know how each individual works, because they don't all work the same way that we work or respond. So we have to be respectful of everyone's personality. You can only do that if you are getting to know them, you're working side by side, and through the different social aspects and seeing them in a different atmosphere, just not with teaching.
Good job. And I also want to emphasize the piece about growing them. I think getting to know them and during your post conferences or after a walkthrough, just sitting down with them for 5 minutes, starting to get to know them as individuals. I never was afraid to try to know people on a personal level. I shared my personal family story, and they shared theirs, and I wasn't ever threatened about them knowing too much about me personally, because it works both ways. They get to know me and what makes me tick, and I get to know them. And I really feel like a piece of that, a real important piece, is growing them professionally. And now that I'm at my age, I'm an old woman, and I can look back on my career. There are some people that I am just so proud of who are now in district leaderships roles. The assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction, I hired her many years ago as an instructional coach, and now she's sitting in that seat. And I hope I had some little part to do with that. I guess maybe I'm rewarding myself for something that I don't know whether I did or not, but it's just so rewarding to see people who you've nurtured. And I think when he means nurturing, to me, it's not coddling or babying or that kind of thing, but you nurture their talents and to see them grow as individuals professionally. It's rewarding to me, and I've told you this several times when we've been on class, to see you guys, those of you, half of you I had in class in 601, and the other few of you I think probably had Dr. Stebbin, and a couple of you probably had Dr. Hamilton. But just to see how much you've grown in your leadership, in your writing, in your work, it's just so rewarding to see that. So never forget to get to know someone and get to know what their goals are professionally, and try to help them grow and try to find opportunities to grow them, whether that be, wanting to be a team leader or a department chair or a grade level chair, whatever, trying to grow people into leadership roles. And it will be real rewarding for you as you look back on your career. Trust me, it really will be. And as far as building relationships, I love the piece about, doing things outside of school. A lot of times, the bigger the staff, the harder it is, like Nyree was saying. And it is important to do things outside of school, whether, it could be that what we're going to do is have a big tailgate before the Friday night football game or whatever as a faculty. And that's kind of hard to do, and probably a silly example, but just like, I'm going to tell you this, guys, and you're going to laugh at me. Working with adults is just like working with kids. Promise you, it is no different. The only difference is they're bigger bodies. They're just like your kids. Get to know them like you know your kids. Get to know what motivates them, what hypes them up, like Shay says, because everybody's different. They're just kids in big bodies. That's all it is. And you're there to grow them. And as you grow them, what happens is it spills over into the classroom, and they become just a really empowered classroom teacher. And that's what you want. So anyway, servant leadership, I just really feel like that's a strong message. Doesn't mean you're weak. There was never one thing I asked people to do that I wasn't getting there to do with them. And all of you see that. I think taken to an extreme, it can be a weakness. When I first became a principal, I was high school principal when I was 36 years old. And I'd been an assistant principal for several years in high school. I was ready. I wasn't not ready. What I wasn't ready for is delegation. I felt like I had to do it all. And as you step out of that classroom, that's going to be one thing you'll have to learn. You cannot do it all. You have to build relationships and get to know people and start empowering some of your key staff to get some things done, because you will crash and burn if you try to do it all on your own. Now, the older I have gotten, and the more mature, I guess is a better word, the better I've gotten at delegated. Now, my family can tell you they don't understand why I say I had trouble delegating, but I did. As a young, I was in a high school at 36, and I was in charge of, most people were even older than I was. And that never intimidated me, but I just had to work hard at building relationships and tried to start delegating. You have to trust people before you want to hand something off, and you don't hand it off and just let them go with it. You've got to, you've got to have some check-ins. You've got to, make sure that you tell them what you want or what your non-negotiables are and those kinds of things. But anyway, I know that was one of my weaknesses. I had several, I'm sure, but that's the one that I remember the most, is not empowering others to help do the work of a school. You just can't do it on your own. Okay, with that said, the next thing, anybody have anything else they want to say about servant leadership?
I do.
Oh, Philip, I didn't even know. Is that you?
I'm Steven.
Oh, I'm Stephen. You just popped on my screen, and so did Philip at the same time. Stephen, go ahead.
What I wanted to say is, so like aside from me teaching, I'm the managing director of a nonprofit in Durham. And one thing that I do with my staff is I make sure that they understand that I understand I too was once in their shoes. So for me, servant leadership is remembering that you too are a person. So, and then when I applied to the school, I remember that I too am a teacher, I too parent, I too everything that they are, or the person that I'm talking to at that time. And so it's like, once I identify outside of my title and I identify as a simple human being, I can start to see where they're coming from. I can have them see where I'm coming from, and everything is more cohesive. So for me, servant leadership was remembering that you two once were where they were. And in doing that, it brings about a humility to where it's not you're going to do what I say because I have this title. I'm
Stephen, we're
in
losing you,
control.
or
It's
at
more
least
so
I am.
we're going to work. That's what it is for me.
Okay, good.
Oh no! What did you hear me say?
Well, I couldn't hear him. Could you guys hear him right there at the end?
No, it was like the last two sentences you said,
Yeah,
Stephen.
that's it.
I said, so for me, it's about remembering that we all come from the same the same background, the same area. And it's more than just exerting your title for what it is, but also remembering that just like you, they are a person, they are people. They deserve the same respect you would want whenever you were in that position. And remembering that brings about a certain humility, a certain humbleness, where the exertion of title isn't needed, but more cohesiveness and connectedness through understanding what they're going through in the position, because you two were once in the position, and understanding what needs to be done from that point of view, as well as the point of view that you're currently hold as principal.
Okay. I remember Dr. Sedman did this thing, and you probably remember it too, in 601. Remember where he actually did the analogy of taking off his hat and saying, you got to take your teacher hat off and put your administrator hat on. You remember that, guys?
Yes.
Well, yeah, you have to look at things through the lens of an administrator, but don't ever, ever forget what it's like to be a teacher. To follow up with what Stephen says, don't ever forget what it's like to be a teacher. And I can remember back in the day when I first started teaching, we didn't have mentors. You were kind of thrown in there, the lion's den, and hopefully somebody took you under their wing. But I struggled as a first year teacher, and I rethought, I was out on my own, living on my own, and I had to work. And probably if that hadn't happened, I don't know that I would have stuck with it, which would have been really a different path for me. But I stuck it out and it got easier, etc. And so never forget what it's like to be that first year teacher. Terry, are you on with us?
I am. I was able to just join.
Okay, sorry, Terry, for the confusion. We're talking about servant leadership. Can you talk about, you want to share how you would apply this in your leadership style when you become a school leader?
So for me, I kind of see myself as a servant leader already. I'm very big on putting others before myself. Even as the athletic director, I always make sure my coaches have everything before I even ask, do I need anything? So I think that a lot of that is just who I am, who my life work has been up to this point. One of the things I did find interesting from the chapter was when it referred to when servant leaders leave, the team is in disarray. I kind of challenged it a little bit because as a servant leader, if I was to ever leave, I would make sure they were still good. I would make sure that transition was as smooth as possible, provide them with resources they need to transition to new leadership. So I can see it, but I also think that even though you leave, you're still a servant to those people because you once led them, and you're committed to them as well.
Thank you. Philip, are you with us?
Yes, ma'am. I actually pulled over on the side of the road so I could really lay into this.
All right, let's hear it.
I'll just say that I've been extremely fortunate to not only in my educational career to work under different leadership styles, but also had the privilege when I was in college to get to travel and go into different scenarios and different schools and different settings. And the things that jumped out to me, the servant leaders in the school that I guess appeal to me. And when I think appeal to servant leadership is, number one, the teachers were invigorated and excited. Like when you said, picture your kids in large bodies, and that's your adults and that's your staff. I'll tell you, as a role of a head coach and now sitting in an athletic director role, what I see is you're 100% correct. The delegation and everything, you're delegating and empowering and giving folks opportunities. But as a servant leader, you got to understand that there's still that secondary word of leadership. You know, servant leadership means to me that you're serving your staff, but you're serving in a way, now you're an educator of educators to your students. You are providing leadership and guidance and showing that, you know, I've worked under folks where it's like, I have no idea how they got to this position because I, as an employee, feel disserviced. I feel, you know, like I've listened to everybody's pieces, but everybody in this chat can honestly probably admit that there are cliques within every staff. You know, like at our school, we've got different departments, man. Those folks are clicked up. I've worked under administrators that notice these cliques and these groups, and the way they lead is you never were comfortable. You could go and sit down in a staff meeting and sit with your friends and the people you coexist with, like your PE teachers and coaches are always going to be in the corner. And then your English girl, you know, I call them English girls because I don't think I've ever worked in a school with a male English teacher yet. My English girls, they're always right in the front. It's like, you know, they're the front row leaders. They're going to be seen, be heard. And, you know, you go around and you look at the departmental pieces, and the thing that jumps out to me that I've noticed that really inspired me was I had a leader one time, and she would come in and it was like it was unknown. Like you were going to have a 3-minute session. When she started it, there was an icebreaker and we moved, and she forced us. And there were certain times that I look back on it. It's like when we were talking and it was mid-year school improvement plan time, like let's look at the goals and all this. We all were active in that and we were empowered. Like she put a football coach with the pre-calc teacher and home ec teacher and one of our counselors. And it was like, hey, you guys got school improvement goal number 1 and group 2's got this. And it was like, she delegated and maneuvered things to where I showed up to faculty meetings as a coach and as a PE teacher. And then it transitioned me to being teaching in science for a little bit. I noticed that I felt empowered. I was excited about faculty meetings because number 1, I had no idea what she was about to do next. And I felt in that moment like a kid. It was like, and she would jump in. It's like, I'm going to be in group this. And then next week it was this. And what it was is everything that everybody spoke on tonight. I noticed that cohesion in the staff, that leadership style, we all knew each other because every week you were working with somebody new. And it was like the icebreaker was like, hey, talk about one thing that somebody don't know about you. Or somebody talk about the favorite food. And that was the icebreaker to what she was leading in the faculty meeting. And we were talking about discipline and committees and different things. And every week we were addressing stuff in our faculty meetings, but it was exciting. It was like, all right, this week I'm going to be with, you know, probably the going out the door retiree and the brand new beginning BT1. And then I've also got the school social worker, but I've also got, you know, my assistant principal. And what are we addressing? We're talking about how do we streamline security at athletic events. And I'm like, awesome. This is my chance to lead because I'm comfortable here. And I got to do that and lead my group. And I got to expose my strengths. And then the next week it would be talking about Math 1 scores and how that affects the school grade. And I'm lost because I hate math. I suck at math. And I'm sitting there and I'm just like, I'm wounded, weak little pup. And it's like, I expressed that. And it's like, as we grew together, like our staff, we didn't have to have those, I guess you would say, growth things. And so as a leader, when you look at these different schools, like I can't think of the gentleman's name that has the school in Atlanta that just does things. He's the guy that lets the kids dance on tables. And he goes outside the box. But those teachers, like he said, it's a very vetting process to get people to come in here and work. And I thought, wow, you know, he's a servant leader because he didn't forget his roots. The thing that I think that's disheartening to teachers is when you sit with administrators that you feel they've lost the essence of understanding. There's so many teachers that talk about, well, they've not been in a classroom in forever. They have no idea what's going on. Like a 30-minute or 40-minute walkthrough or snapshots, not telling them what teaching's really like today. All they got to do, you know, all they deal with is the metrics. All they deal with the discipline. And, you know, even through my internship, I motivate my administrators I'm currently working with, like, hey, like, let's just do random pop-ins. Let's just do random things where you catch your teachers doing something great. Let's highlight the things we're doing great, and let's bring those up to make that comfort. And then, I've noticed even now, like our administrators are doing some really creative things. Like at lunchtime, they'll just randomly like call me and put me. I mean, and now it sucks for me being AD because I have to go sit in lunch duty. But he'll just, like, our principal, like, hey, Russ, I need you to come sit in the cafeteria. I gotta go do something. And he'll just go find a teacher and be like, hey, look, yesterday you were talking about this, but I saw you do this. Hey, great job. I just want to let you know, like, it's been on my mind, good deal. And it's like those little plugs. That to me, servant leadership. When you go outside of the job and you're kind of like, hey, I acknowledge what you're doing. I see what you're trying to do, and it doesn't feel like you're going to work to suffer. You're going to work for a dictator. You're working for somebody that truly understands boots on the ground in the classroom and truly understands the district, and how can they be a liaison above to.
Okay. So Philip,
Sorry.
no, my guess, you got really excited about that principal. So my guess is that she is going to be one that you're going to model after when you become a school leader.
I would say, yeah. I mean, like, I'll just tell you, she's now working in Tampa. She left North Carolina. She's in Tampa, Florida, and she's on the front leading edge of like 21st century skill implementation, doing like a lot of progress monitoring tools. I mean, she's on the front edge, and she finally made it to a school to where they allow her the autonomy to kind of take her staff, involve them completely, and letting it be I guess you would say, a student-centered classroom organization. Like, she does impeccable work through her positioning to allow her teachers to kind of be more savvy on what the new age stuff and mixing old school, new school. She just likes to call herself like a mesh administrator. She meshes everything extremely well.
That's great. Some of us are never fortunate enough to work under an individual like Philip has described. But I propose that you can learn just as much by being under an ineffective principal. You can learn from them what you don't want to do. And that can be just as powerful. See, you have to find your leadership style and what you're comfortable with. And remember, like you say, we're working with adults so that they can be the best teacher they can be for your children. That's ultimately the goal, is getting people to pull together to be strong instructions so that the children benefit, strong instructors so the children can benefit. So, I'm glad you had the opportunity to work for somebody that strong and that effective, because that will impact you quite a bit. I can hear your enthusiasm, and wow, you're right. She got people out of their cliques quickly, and that's great, and got some work done, some very important work done. All right, speaking of which, anybody else before we move on to our case study? Okay, our case study for, I'm assuming it's next week, is case study 2. You guys have done a case study before, both in this course and other courses. So this is the scenario, and I'm not going to read it tonight for the sake of time. You have your problem. And here are questions that you are to consider and to have prepared when you have your case study Zoom meeting. So first and foremost, you want to designate a Zoom master, and it should not be the same person who done the first case study. And then you are going to, as individuals, prepare your responses to these 7 questions. Now, of course, since you're in 605, this is a culmination of everything you've had, 601, 603, and what you've had in 605. And you want to speak to these questions from your readings, research, your experiences that have helped you grow as a leader during your clinical work. Hopefully, there will be something that you learned in your coursework that you can bring in to help you support your answers. But what we want to avoid is, well, I think da 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 da. Well, who are you? You need to back it up with some literature, some of your readings, some of your evidence work, something you've done in clinicals that would be noteworthy. But you know, you need to back it up and have that scholarly discussion. What are you basing this on? There could be some school law. I'll be honest with you, I didn't read the case study, but you may need to back up and look at your school law a little bit. I know there's some ethical issues involved here. So, you know, you can talk about ethical issues as it relates to your own personal moral compass. And hopefully you will make those connections to, you know, the code of ethics that we as educators are required to uphold. So anyway, be sure that when you're answering, you're backing up your responses, and you just record, make sure you record. And then during the case study, you share your responses, and after the Zoom, then you have to write a 1-page, 2-part reflection. You write a summary of the case study. Don't just regurgitate it. Pick out the most important points that you think that are there in the case study. Because lots of times in case studies, they'll give you stuff that's really not important, that is really meant to be a distractor from the important piece. So synthesize the case study, and then do a 1/2-page reflection on your takeaways from your scholarly discussion. And again, this is a scholarly discussion, so we would need to see you or hear you, hear you talk about some of your readings, some of the research you've done over your 3 courses, those kinds of things. Any questions on the case study? Okay. The last thing he wanted me to bring up before we talk about TaskStream real quickly is he wanted me to bring up and talk about the SIOP Task 6. Did that share a new screen? Can you see change management?
Yes, ma'am.
You can't, Erica?
Yes.
Case study.
Okay. Let me do a new share. Can you see it now? It says change management. Okay. All right. This is your reflection piece. You know, you have to do a reflection piece at the end of each of your pieces of evidence. And on your reflections this time, and I don't know if this is the first time you've had to do it. You may have had to do it when you did the CAP. I don't remember. But in this one, you need to make sure that you are putting a self-assessment. You want to make sure that you're saying that you're competent in all of these at this point. So make sure you do that. Have you had to do that before? Okay. We all want you to be competent and at least. And so make sure in your reflections that you have 2 paragraphs, basically. You're reflecting on your coursework, something from your coursework. And this can be broadened. It doesn't have to be just from your CAP and your SIOP. You can go back and pick out some things that you felt like may have been out that stood out to you, even in this person did the skip. And then we want the second paragraph to talk about your internship, something that you did to demonstrate this competency during your internship. And then, and they did a little summary paragraph about their internship. Then you can take your next one. Again, the name of the competency, competent. First paragraph, your evaluators always look for in my coursework. And you know what? I know you think it's repetitive, but just say in my coursework when I was completing the skip or the SIOP or the CAP or whatever, OMA. And then start the next paragraph during my internship or during my clinical work. But you need to have a reflection from both coursework and clinical for each and every competency. Questions? Okay, I know some of you are at many, many different places with a PSYOP. I will reiterate to you again, I'm working with some students who are starting the doctoral program this semester. They skipped 605 and started their doctoral work, but they have to do the evidence work, the CAP and the PSYOP. You know, the skip, you would think it would be the easiest one, but I almost think it's the most difficult one because you're trying to mesh stuff that you're bringing in, data that you're bringing in from previous work and trying to bring it to a new PLC or to a PLC. It could be your same PLC that if you've used the same PLC all the way through. And that's a little bit more difficult than we instructors let on like it is. So anyway, hopefully you're working your way through with that. If you have any questions, of course, make sure you can reach out to me or Dr. Stedman. He likes you to reach out to him first, but I can sure help you with that too as well. But, you know, just keep on track with your PSYOP because you're going to be finished up here before you blink your eye. Next week is going to be the halfway mark. So with that said, I want us to turn our attention to our competency folio. I was pleasantly surprised when I looked at your competency folios. And let me sign in. And I've asked a few of you if I could use your folios tonight for some examples. So I want to do that. Guys, you have done a really good job. For the most part, all of you done a really good job of keeping up with your competencies every semester. And that makes it so much easier when you get to 605. Your folios are in really good shape. Most all of you already have approved 2 artifacts for each competency. And some of you haven't, but that's okay. We'll get that squared away. I'm not sure why this is whirling for me. Somebody want to sing a song while I'm getting this up and going? All right. Philip, since you're the only one online right now that I asked permission to look at. So if you don't mind, I'm going to look at yours. So he's got some requests for comments in there. So when I look at his communication, here's what you need to make sure you've done. And I'm going to ask you to do a couple things just to make it easier on me. And that's not why I should be doing that, but I am. You can see for this evidence communication competency, excuse me, you are supposed to pull an artifact from your APSL, your PSYOP, and open-ended. And of course, you know that means internship, clinical. So you can see very clearly he's got the heading. This happened in spring 2022, APSL. This happened in summer 2022, and it was an open-ended. And this is my fall 2022, and it's from PSYOP. So this helps. It's just kind of like an organizational tool for you, because remember, you take this with you, and he's got everything labeled by semester and by evidence. I can look real clearly. I know that's APSL, open-ended, and PSYOP. He's done the 3 he's supposed to do. But look how he's also labeled his artifacts. They're the same way, APSL, open-ended, PSYOP. And I think that's good. Now, if you haven't done it this way, don't go back and redo anything. All right? For heaven's sakes. But as you're moving and doing this semester's, I want you to put fall 2022 and of course label where you got it from, which evidence artifact, and or open-ended. And that's the way I would like for you to label your artifact as well. Because it gets real, if you don't, I have to go through every one of these to find out which one goes with the last one. And Philip has already submitted something to this one, but look, you guys, you did one in your first semester, spring. Dr. Maraglios signed you off in summer, and there you go. I've signed him off. He's done with his competency. Now, the other thing I want to draw attention to is remember for the digital learning competency down here at the bottom, we don't put anything there. We weave them throughout all the other 20 competencies. So Philip has made sure that he writes and highlights which ones of these artifacts would satisfy the digital learning. Anytime you use a digital tool, you need to call it digital learning. Anytime. Okay? So don't forget to do that. I did not see this on everyone. So as you're going through with this time, just go back and think, would this be considered a digital? Did I use any digital tools? And if you did, put it in there. Okay. Any questions as far as your competency folio? Now, I wanted to show you Arius's. I got permission from her, and I wanted to show you hers. Okay. Customer focus. And I'm certainly not picking on Iris because I saw this on everybody. On this one, she only did one in the spring. For some reason, she missed this one in the summer. Okay, no big deal. Just go back and do it. She did an open-ended in her first semester because we hadn't done the OMA and the skip. So her next two that she has to do would be OMA and then one from the skip. One of them, we want you to label it as summer 2022. Now you say, wait a minute, Dr. Revis, I didn't do that in summer 2022. Well, pick one you did. You did the OMA or the skip, one or the other of those in the summer of 2022. Go back and pick an evidence from one of those and label it summer 2022, and I sign off on both of them. Okay? Everybody got that? All right. So if you got behind, no worries. Just make sure you're labeling by the semester if you missed a semester. The other thing, let me look down at global. She's got a lot of good artifacts in here. Okay. Global says CAP, PSYOP, and one open-ended. In this first semester, she did an open-ended. In the second semester, she did one from the skip. And you may say, wait a minute, she shouldn't have done that. If her clinical coach signed off on it, you're good to go. Don't go back and fix anything. She just needs to pick one this semester from either the CAP or the PSYOP. You can't have two open-ended. But if your coach signed off on it, don't worry about if it didn't, if it didn't fall within these two. But you cannot have two open-ended. Make sense? Show me some affirmation here, guys. Okay. And let's see, there was one more. This one's a hard one, I think, emotional. intelligence. And she's met all these. Sometimes it's very hard for us to look at emotional intelligence. That's the one that I always struggle when you first start out. You want to talk about your students, and that's okay, but here we're getting to the school leadership level. So you want to make sure that when if you're talking about students, it's not your student. You're talking about dealing with students in general, or someone else's student if you've had to sit in on a discipline issue or whatever. But here we would want to see examples of how you have demonstrated this competency with the adults, probably. Unless we're talking about students overall in your school, but she does a really good job of this with this emotional intelligence. Okay, any questions on competency folio and what you need to do to move forward?
I do have a question.
Sure, Michael.
So I'm in this, I guess, predicament now because I haven't used any open-ended, but I've got it all approved. So what's my next steps if I haven't used any?
Michael, do you mind if we look at yours?
Of course.
Okay. Okay. So you've done an APSL and an OMA, which you should have. So this semester you've got to do open-ended. Okay. Is that your situation on all of them? Yeah.
I think so. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, you just got to go back and remember, open-ended is from your clinical, and you can go back to your first semester to pick something.
Okay.
Now, here's a question you may have. Well, I sat in on a discipline issue. I remember it vividly because it was the first discipline issue that I sat in on, and the parents were non-native speakers. We had to get an interpreter, and it was just a lot of cross-cultural issues. And you may want to put that, but okay, you say, but I didn't, I couldn't take a picture of it. I can't have a picture for an evidence with a parent conference, and there's no artifact. What do I do? What you can do as an artifact is get your administrator with whom you sat in on this conference with to write a short summary and say that Mr. Terry sat in with me on such and such a day. You might have it in your clinical log on such and such a day as we engaged in a really cross-cultural discussion with a new family. And then that's your artifact. You can go back and get your administrator to give you justification. Now, what you can't do is you can't write the summary yourself.
Okay.
You're going to write the summary and you're going to put that here, but your summary would not be your artifact. Does that make sense, Michael?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The hardest artifacts to collect are those from your clinical work.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, that's for everybody because we get busy doing and we forget to get the artifact, or what you're doing is confidential in nature. And so you can't take a photograph. You can't, video it. It's just really hard to get some of those artifacts. So that's why the administrator who you were watching or observing or participating with can write you that verification. Okay?
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions? And I actually am going to be the one to review your folios. So again, I know this is an ask just to be convenient for me, but Michael's done a good job here because he labeled his artifacts APSL. I know where to go to look at that one. Summer 2020, I know where to go look at that one. If you just label them by the semester, so I know which one is fall 2020, I'll be a happy camper. So if you don't, I got to look at every one of these. And that's just, I don't need to do that. And I need to be doing other things that are more helpful to you rather than open up every one of these darn things. Now, remember at the bottom where you got all your internship logs, you always put your internship logs by semester here. And I look at them. Michael, I hope you don't mind me doing this. So he's already been signed off on spring and summer. So when he uploads his fall here, I'm going to look at it and I'm going to say, Michael, you are ready to upload into your DRF. You've completed all your clinical work and you're ready to upload it in your DRF folio. So that's when you take them from here and put them over in your other folio where you submit all your evidence work. Excuse me, you guys know what I'm talking about. Have you seen that in your DRF? Where it says,
I have.
yeah. And a lot of people get messed up and they'll put stuff in their DRF instead of putting the semester ones here. And then we tell you when to move them over. And there's a little video that's in your course shell that tells you how to do that. But don't do it until I give you the go ahead. And then what I'll do after I go through everything and make sure everything has 3 completed artifacts, then up here in the overall comments, I will write, you have successfully completed all requirements for your competency folio and your clinical internship for this program. And won't we be happy? Yay. So are you guys not so excited? You are 8 weeks away from finishing this program, really 7. So I'm so excited for you. And I'm just going into these competency folios. They are in such good shape. And I appreciate the hard work that you have put in on the front end, because this is going to be a breeze for you to get this finished. Any other questions on your competency folio? Any questions on your PSYOP before we end tonight? Any other comments? Anybody would like to share anything else? Okay, guys, so I want you to come up with some elaborate stories for Dr. Stedman that we have just been had this wild and crazy party and went off topic and didn't get a thing done tonight, and we'll see him panic. Like I was panicking at 6 p.m. when I could not start this Zoom link. But anyway, I appreciate your attendance and your contributions tonight. And if no one else has anything else, we are going to sign off tonight. And you are going to hopefully get to use these extra few minutes of your time to do some good work in your program. So Erica, you got to stay with us through the whole time, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay, great. Thank you guys for your attention and your contributions, and have a good rest of your week.
Good night.
Night.